Objective of this session is to learn how to call REST web services. REST web services are stands for representation state transfer, and they also use the HTTP protocol. So it may be either in the HTTP GATE or POST. So we will be using some HTTP kind of connections to call the REST web services. In Android, there are two types of HTTP connections which are supported. One is the default HTTP client, and another is HTTP URL connection. Default HTTP client has some security problems, that is why it has been deprecated. So I'm just leaving this and moving ahead actually to the HTTP URL connection actually. How we use the HTTP URL connection for accessing the any REST web services or any HTTP resource. So for that, the first thing that we have to do is the set up the URL. Set up the URL, and once we have set up the URL, then we can obtain the HTTP URL connection object by calling URL.openConnection. Then we can get the HTTP URL connection object by calling the URL.openConnections. And having got the open the connection, now we need to prepare our request. So request, we will have to set what kind of request we are making. Are we making a GET request or we are making a POST request? Default request is GET. So if we are not making GET, if we are not making POST, we can keep it. We may not set this property. Along with that, we will have to configure. If we want to some request buffer data, then we will have to set do output true, and then we will have to get the output stream using get output string and write data onto that. That way our request data has gone to the server, and then we need to start reading the response. For reading the response, we can read the response code and see if this is a fine, then we can read the get input stream and start reading the response from the server and send it for the processing. Last thing that we do is, once everything is done, we need to disconnect the URL connections. So let me go on each step, like creating the URL, what we do. So URL connection object may be creating by just passing the any string URI to the URL constructor. That's the URL is equal to new URL, and then we can pass any string URL. This string may be formed by string concatenation or string dot any method actually can be done actually, or we can use the URI builder class to make this kind of string URL. In a string URI builder, we pass all the parameters one by one. So we pass what is the scheme, or is this a HTTP or HTTPS? Then which server, what is the name of the server, then what are the various paths appended to that. So we append the path, and then what are the parameters we are sending along with the URL. If it is a get kind of request buffer, then the parameters go along with the URL. If it is a post kind of request buffer, then parameters go in the request body actually. So in the get request buffer, parameters go along with the URL, and whereas in the case post request buffer, the parameters, query parameters, go in the request body. So here we are, if we are setting it the URL and doing it the get request, then we will be appending the request parameters also. So here we are setting the append query parameters. By this it will be append and format as required by the HTTP. So you do not have to append the special characters, otherwise you will have to append the special characters like this. And then having done it, we can build the URI by using the build method and then convert it to the string URL. And this string URL may be passed into the URL string, and a URL may be built. Having built the URL, now we can have the HTTP URL connection by calling the URL.open connection. URL.open connection, we can do that. Having opened it, now we have to see how we handle the request buffer. So for request buffer, a lot of parameters can be set. Here we are setting a few parameters, like what kind of request method we are going to use. Are we going to use GET or POST? If it is a GET, then surely we would have sent all the parameters along with the URL. Then we do not have to bother. If it is a POST parameter, then we will be sending our query parameters in the request body. For sending into the request body, we will have to say that, okay, please open the output stream. Please open the output stream, so that we can write onto that. So for that, we will have to call URLConnection.setOutput true. Having done the set output true, we will have to format the post parameters in a string in the key value pair and connected by @ connected by $sign. So something like this, what we have shown here. And then we open the output stream and preferably change this to the buffered output stream or buffered writer, and write the post parameter on this output stream. And output stream must be flushed and closed. So once it is done, our request buffer handling is done, and now we will be start getting the response from the server. We shall be getting the response from the server. For handling the response from the server, handling the request response from the server, initially we can do the URLConnection.getResponse code. Okay, and this will give what kind of response are we getting, whether the URL exists, not exists, and the data has been sent. And then we can start accepting the data from the server. For that, we must do the set do input true. Set do input true. If we set do input false, then we cannot accept any input from the server. We cannot accept any input. So for having done it, then we will get the input stream by doing the get input stream, and input stream we can convert it to the buffered reader, and then we can read the data line by line. Like here we can have a command or have a statement like line is equal to buffered reader dot read line, and then we can append into the response string. And then we will be closing the buffer reader and buffered stream, and then having closed it, we have the response from the server, and whatever we want to do, we can do that. For doing all these things, we have to do this always in the background. So we need to use either a sync task, or we have to create another thread and process it.